virtual conference and symposium. The scope has come a long way since we conceptualized this webinar series in April, just after the lockdown. And with the enthusiasm and the zeal which has been exhibited by all the participants, that we have successfully organized 12 webinars so far on various fields, on various subjects. I'm pleased to share that we got overwhelming response for all the webinars, and today also the response is overwhelming. Like Sabriti mentioned, more than 500 participants have registered, and many are viewing it through various social platforms of Scope, Department of Science and Technology, and Indian Oil Corporation. In addition to webinars, recently at Scope we have taken a series of studies. We have launched these studies on various subjects, which will be followed with the capacity building exercise also. For example, one study in the climate change with ZH at Germany, another study on the leadership with CCL USA, another study of women empowerment with ILO Geneva. We are also coming out with a compendium on PSC's contribution amongst COVID-19, a tribute to the kind of efforts, the tireless efforts which have been done in the public sector enterprises during this difficult period. At this juncture, regarding webinars, I would like to confess that the webinars have been strengthened due to the presence of esteemed speakers and the panelists. Today, as mentioned, that we are privileged to have highly acclaimed panel of experts who have been working one way or another in the field of digital transformation. Foremost, we are privileged to have Professor Ashutosh Sharma, Secretary Department of Science and Technology, whose vision and foresight has resulted in many new initiatives of Government of India, starting from building capacities, research, innovation, clean energy, to collaborating with industries, to collaborating with academics, and to bring science to the common man. I had the privilege of listening to him or interacting with him on many occasions, and always I found that I have got enriching experience, enriching knowledge while interacting with him. His esteemed presence adds value and strength to this webinar, because this is a strategic importance, the technology is strategic importance today and for the future also. And who is the better person to guide us than respected Secretary himself? He will bring both the perspective, academician perspective also, and the government perspective also. Thank you once again, sir, for sparing your valuable time. I'm also grateful to Shri Vaidya ji. Last month, he has taken over as the chairman of IOCL, a Maharatna organization, PSCs, the largest commercial downstream oil company in the country, and consistently figuring amongst the Fortune Global 500 list of world's largest companies. Thank you, Mr. Vaidya. I'm sure with your experience and the IOCL, the role which they are playing in the Indian economy, you would be able to understand the corporate perspective on the technology from you. Ladies and gentlemen, all of you are aware that pandemic has presented the entire world with an alarming health and economic crisis, and is affecting every element of business, starting from the supply chain, volatile and declining demand, availability of labor, and even financial issues. In this hour of uncertainty, in fact, the technology, especially the digital technology, that has broadened the business horizon by making the corporate more agile. In fact, I like to say that pandemic, in fact, it is a watershed moment in the digital transformation of business. And it's clearly, this in future is going to be more and more dependent on the digital technology in the post-COVID era also. So we need to leverage this technology for sustenance as well as growth. Public sector enterprises, which have got the pan-India presence, beside that global presence also, they are also not left behind. They have taken a series of steps in this regard, and many organizations have introduced new concepts, but they need to be, all the public sector enterprise need to be future technology ready. Here I like to touch upon 3 points which are very important, 3 aspects. The first is regarding the skilling and empowering the people in using the technology. And empowering or skilling the people, not only your own employees, but the people who are our stakeholders, including our suppliers, including our partners, including our customers, even investors also. Second aspect I like to touch upon is we need to be digitally ready and digitally equipped infrastructure. So a kind of digital transformation which has to take place. And the third most important point is that we need to have the systems change. Digitally enabled models has to be there. Concept of e-offices has been introduced in most of the organization. And even the government of India offices also, a lot of changes have taken place. So in all the 3 areas, we need to work. We have seen that in the recent COVID period, many organizations, they faced a concern regarding the skill set available with the employees and the kind of infrastructure they are having, as well as the systems issue they were having because manual clearances, etc., were becoming an issue. So we thought that we should have this particular webinar, which will definitely define the role of the emerging technology during the COVID area, as well as post-COVID area time also. Even before the onset of the COVID, based on my discussions with the Secretary Department of Public Enterprises and his team, we were thinking of conducting a digital technology maturity, or rather a technology maturity survey for the public sector enterprises. This we were going to launch, and based on that, we wanted to have the capacity assessment, capacity building exercise also of these public sector enterprises. And this has the need for this survey as well as the capacity building, especially in the new emerging technology, has definitely has to be hastened up, and we will be taking up its scope shortly in this study as well as the capacity building exercise for the public sector enterprises. I'm sure that with the support of government and the public sector enterprises, this particular study will become very handy and will be useful for making the public sector enterprises future technology ready. I'm sure that our experts from KPMG, they will help us to learn new approaches on the technology and the example. They will also tell us the example of the international organization, that how they have adopted this technology. I would like to thank Manas and Shashank. Both of them, they are the expert in this particular field, and definitely their presentation would pave the way for PSEs for broadening their horizon for adopting the technology. Once again, I like to welcome all the guests, speakers, and participants to this very strategic webinars, and which will help each one of us to learn something today. Best wishes for the webinar, and thank you. Thank you to all. Over to Sudhiti.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your address. May I now request Chairman IOCL for his opening remarks. Shri Vaidya has over 3 decades of extensive experience in refining and petrochemicals and is amongst the few technocrats in the Indian oil and gas space who are proficient in all facets of refinery petrochemicals integration. Sir, we would like to hear your viewpoint on the emerging technologies. Over to you, sir, Chairman IOCL. Shri Vaidya ji.
Mr. Professor Ashutosh Sharma, Secretary Department of Science and Technology, Mr. Atul Sopti, Director General Scope, Mr. Manas Majumdar, and Mr. Sushant Raba from KPMG, other distinguished guests and invitees, ladies and gentlemen, a very good afternoon to you all. It's a great pleasure for me to be here as a part of this event to gain insights into a very relevant subject for all of us in the present times, digital transformation in COVID-19. As the COVID-19 pandemic continues to impact lives and livelihoods in a span of only a few months, the only positive trend that has been the speedy adaptation and use of technology by both individuals and corporates. Technology is omnipresent in today's life, right from our personal chores of office shopping to online medical consultations, virtual offices for conduct of business to virtual schools for children. Simply put, the pandemic has been a catalyst in speeding up digital transformation in the way we lead our lives and do our business. This dynamism has influenced public sector enterprises also. Earlier, the key concern for adoption of technology across functions was cross-skilling of employees. Given the urgency forced upon by the pandemic, most employees have smoothly learned and adapted to use technology to the advantage of the organization. At Indian Oil too, digital technology has emerged as the fulcrum around which the entire organization is functioning seamlessly to maintain the supply lines of essential fuels with minimal disruptions. For instance, the LPG supply and distribution software was primed at its full potential to deal with the sharp rise in the cooking gas demand from households during the lockdown period. For the benefit of its 13.11 crore LPG customers, Indian Oil has put in place several convenient modes of refill booking from home like SMS, IVRS, WhatsApp, digital payments, websites, and other online booking refills through mobile apps. This way, about 25 lakh Indian customers are able to book for LPG refills every day from the comfort of their homes and take delivery at their doorsteps. An integrated retail automation system is enabling real-time monitoring and data transfer to and from the corporation's 21,000 plus automated fuel stations. This enables Indian Oil teams to monitor daily on individual highways in each state, in each region, about the sales and the effects and how we can plan for the future. The corporation developed apps for its channel partners, bulk customers, vendors, and service providers had also come in very handy during the current crisis. A contract labor management system launched in February 2020 facilitates contractors in maintaining the data of workers under them and generate their wage register. A bill tracking dashboard enables vendors to submit bill-wise details and track their payments on the issue online. New needs on the various business functions arising out of the lockdown are being continuously supported with the software additions and modifications. Indian Oil's critical locations, which operated right through the lockdown, were able to cope well with the new norms for social distancing, again thanks to technology. For instance, advanced automation technology at our smart terminals allows them to operate with skeletal staff. Tank truck crews picking up products from these terminals are equipped with smart cards that permit self-service right from the pre-timed entry to exit. During the critical lockdown period, Indian Oil employees in non-critical administrative offices had to work from home, providing back-end support to the frontline teams manning the critical locations. The corporation attempted to create a digital twin of the workplace for them. Virtual private networks were used to connect people to office servers and business applications and data hosted in them. Conferencing enabled stimulate office scenarios that require group discussion and collective decision making. Right from company board meetings to senior management interactions with employees, groups, resellers, and even farewells for retiring employees went through the digital platform and using multiple tools. New digital procedures were put in place for processing bills, seeking approvals, and making payments online. An enterprise content management system rolled out in April 2019 to achieve a paperless office proved to be an invaluable asset in these times of crisis. It hosts modules like collaboration, document management, e-approvals, and business workflow automation, obviating the need for physical movement of files. Post-lockdown announcements, additional apps were developed overnight for employees and their families seeking teleconsultation with doctors on the corporation's panel and to enable work-from-home employees to mark their daily attendance and also give their COVID-19 status. A time office attendance management system captures employee attendance details at 500 plus locations on a real-time basis. The current lockdown has also spurred a technology-aided revolution in Indian Oil. In September 2019, the corporation had launched Swadhyay, an e-learning platform accessible to its employees from anywhere, anytime, and on any device. With the entire content developed in-house by the subject matter experts, Swadhyay currently has about 600 modules covering about 69 business locations, and more content is being added on a continuous basis. The popularity of the e-portal can be gauged from the fact that over 18,000 Indian Oil employees could access and complete about 6 lakh e-modules. Incidentally, Indian Oil is observing the year 2020 as the year of digitalization to highlight the current critical role and future potential of digitalization in driving change and transforming people and processes. I am sure this webinar shall address most of the concerns pertaining to digital transformation and would give us all greater clarity on the subject. The presence of Professor Ashutosh Sharma ji is indeed very encouraging, and your thoughts, sir, would help us to tide over these difficult times with more confidence. I would like to compliment DG Scope on turning this adversity of the pandemic into an opportunity and making optimum use of technology to continue his endeavors for the good of public sector enterprises. I wish this all the very best for the proceedings henceforth, and I thank you very much for a very patient hearing.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your encouraging words. It is indeed our honor to have amongst us Professor Ashutosh Sharma ji, Secretary, Department of Science and Technology. Sir has helped initiate several new programs related to capacity building, innovation, startups, R&D, etc. As DG sir also mentioned, he has brought back focus on science by working in areas of industry, academia, cooperation, science communication, women scientists, while concluding key international collaborations for the nation. With his wide experience and knowledge, Sir has published over 350 peer-reviewed papers, filed over 15 patents, and given over 150 keynote presentations and addresses on international forums, while also successfully mentoring nanotechnology startup. May I invite Secretary Sir for his keynote address, please. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Smriti. Smriti, can you hear me?
Sir,
okay?
Your audio is very clear, sir.
Very clear, wonderful. So indeed, this is a great occasion to meet up on one of the very strong pillars of economy, which is PSUs. It's always a great pleasure for me to interact with different stakeholders of PSU ecosystem. It's always been great coming to Scope Complex, and of course, Mr. Atul Sobati for organizing this webinar, and for very clear address by Mr. Vaidya about how digital technologies are going to be helping us in so many different ways. So it's clear we hear everything about digital technologies, and going through the period of virus and beyond it. Look, I'm also very happy to see our KPMG partners, Sushant Rabra and Manas Majumdar. These are the guys who actually, tell us about everything about, what's going on and what needs to be done and so on. Indeed, always very grateful for their advice. So, of course, you see, the point is that the future has been coming at us at faster and faster speed, even before the times of COVID-19. But now it becomes clear and present. So our objectives become clearer, our methods that we need to adopt to go forward with the speed and scale becomes clearer. And in fact, there's a spontaneous coming together of large number of stakeholders of science, technology, and innovation. And PSU, like I pointed out, is a very, very strong pillar, both of that current economy and of the things to come. So I'm very glad that we are meeting here on this webinar, even though it was pointed out that this is 13th webinar of Scope. 13th is not necessarily a great number by some reckoning. It's just like some of the hotels go 13th floor missing. Maybe we should think about not having a 13th webinar. But anyhow, since we have had it, we are going to make not just the best of it, the best of it, and I'm sure that this would be a very learning experience. It already was for me listening to Mr. Vaidya, and we have a great deal of people with keen insights, analysis here with us. And so I also would, I'm very delighted to see large number of people with us, listening to us. And if you got some ideas, feel free to write to me at Department of Science and Technology, the Government of India. It so happens that we also in the middle was for me of formulating a new policy for science, technology, and innovation. 2020. So we are moving with great speed. So far, we have had consultation with few thousand people, from all walks of life, from the school children to farmers to women living in the small towns, of course with scientists, of course with people from industry, and we are going to have a special session for PSUs. So whole point is that when you wish to think about something 2020, especially something like science and technology, which is not really a vertical, it's a horizontal, which means that this is a tool which goes across all the sectors, it goes across every activity that we do in life. And no matter who I am, I'm going to be impacted by what happens in science and technology. So this is a very good time actually to take a stock and to think about where we are and where do we want to be. So like I said, if you got ideas about a new policy for New India in science, technology, and innovation, please do write to us. Anyways, there would also be a draft of the policy that would be put on for public consultations, perhaps in another couple of months. And I welcome every single suggestion. It's all very important for us. So, okay, now we are looking at digital and beyond COVID-19, and the passage is not yet over. Certainly, it has a great impact on availability of labor, both the general and the specific critical labor, inward stocks and logistics, supply chains, working capital, outward logistics, distribution efficiency. Whole lot of things are impacted, and I don't need to get into it very deeply because we are all very aware of how the little virus has disrupted our lives beyond measure. This is once in a century happening. And the whole point is that if we don't come out of it 10x stronger than when we went in, then we have frittered away the opportunity that the little virus offered us. And make no mistakes about it, the opportunities are always in proportion to challenges. So the bigger the size of challenge, the more disruptive the challenge is, greater would be the opportunity for us to shed our weight. And this is a great opportunity. If we let go of this, I don't know, then we are certainly the losers. And I'm sure we would not be the losers. Now, if you look at the sectors in terms of percentage GDP contributions and employment, and whether the impact is high, medium, low, and stuff, we actually we did a little survey and also read up some stuff. So MSME, of course, with a 30% GDP share, employing 11.4 crore people, is certainly an high impact area because of so many different disruptions, inlet, outlet, and in the process. Food and agri, 15% GDP share, 43% population works on it, has a medium impact, and that's expected because, well, you can't live without food. So clearly, if you want to figure out what's going to have a bigger impact, smaller impact, medium impact, the thing to look at it, can you live without it for a few months, for a few years? If you can, then it's going to have bigger impact. And of course, it depends on what kind of critical inputs that sector depends on. Aviation and tourism, 11.5% GDP share, 4.3 crore people employed in it, certainly a high impact sector. Apparel and textiles, 2% GDP contribution, 4.5 crore people working on it. Medium to high impact. Auto sector, 8% GDP, 4 crore people. high impact, construction and materials, 10% GDP, high impact, retail 10%, 10% workforce employed by it, medium, high impact, because part of the retail slack, of course, is taken up by digital retail. And so that's one of the stories in which you look at future getting accelerated and coming at us with ever greater sense of urgency and purpose. Education and skills certainly is in total disarray right now. Okay, but like we are meeting here, look, before the COVID-19 times, we used to have these meetings in which you travel 1 hour one way, and there would be 50 people there, and half of them dozing off. Um, and so now you can actually talk to the. Yesterday I had a webinar in which there were over 10,000 people, right? So it doesn't matter if I want to reach out to every PhD student in this country today. There is a wherewithal actually to do that, to bring everybody on the same platform. Of course, I said about 50 people and half of them dozing off. Of course, I mean, this even better with webinars because we don't notice that people are dozing off. So what you don't see doesn't hurt. So it's kind of good, a psychological booster. So no matter how you look at it, I think these are the new opportunities which have come to us. And if we don't grab them with all the strength that we got with both hands, then we have not really learned anything. So what's happening in the digital world and the sectors that we looked at, right? Now, you see, we talk about Industry 4.0. Industry 4.0 is here, and so is Society 5.0. Industry 4.0 is very tightly concerned and centered on smart machines. Other words, the convergence of different strands of technology, different strands of science. What are these strands? These are, well, if you look at communication, computing, decision making by artificial intelligence, machine learning, perception by sensors, and autonomous action by actuators, and the connectivity and the brains, right? So the future is all about convergence of technologies from communication, computing to algorithms to also physical things. Society 5.0, on the other hand, is centered on people and their needs. So, other words, the industry and the machines and the technology are at the periphery, which means that look, when there are lights and shadows of technology, we ought to be able to resolve them by the will of the society. The machines are not going to resolve any conflict, right? Because we have created those machines and those conflicts. So therefore, a wisdom which flows from society and the different stakeholders of happiness, the solution has to flow from there, which basically means the architecture for Society 5.0, and both of these are intimately dependent on what we call digital and cyber. You cannot, you see, so when we looked at Industry 0 is based on is based on control and flow of muscle, brute force. Might is right. You just walk in with an army, you kill few people and take over. Industry 1 was basically based on steam engines and therefore rise of central, big empires of industry, centralized industry. Um, Industry 2.0 was based on electricity for power, which means technology got in our homes, which means that little businesses could be distributed all over the place. Industry 3.0, most of us have seen the rise of it very rapidly, which is a rise of digital technologies. And basically digital technologies which are still passive, which means that I carry them in my pocket and on my desk. But I am not really intimately part of those digital machines that I handle. They don't control my lives. Right now, okay, getting into Industry 4.0 and the associated society and the processes and the architecture and the structure. It's all about the society we are transiting in now. is all about not control of materials, not control of muscle, not control of energy even. It is based on the control of data, information, knowledge, wisdom. Of course, wisdom, very little. But in any case, uh, whoever generates data owns it, controls the flow of the data, controls the manipulation of that information and data, which are, of course, not the same thing. Data and information are vastly different things. But anyway, I'm saying it in the same breath. So whoever does that, who manipulates, who builds on data, is the king, right? And the future is all about that. So as a detour, let me just say, India for a very long time, historically, has not respected data, not respected raw material. So essentially we said, hey, what's raw material is dirt cheap, you take it, do value addition, and bring in back to me at 100x, 1000x, million x, a billion x value, right? Now, data, as people say, is the new oil, but I have to differ with them. Data actually is new water, because oil, well, may or may not be forever, but the organic life form on earth cannot survive without water. And so we must value data. Don't ever throw it away. No matter, your friend will come with an artificial intelligence algorithm. I say, hey, I got the algorithm, you got the data, give me your data, then I'll train my algorithm. And then, anyway, what's data? Dirt cheap, right? Don't ever fall for that, because to create data, it takes a lot more effort, lot more, in fact, investment than in any odd artificial intelligence algorithm. I know all of them. And so I also know how data is produced and consumed. So this is a very critical factor for India, because India has got strengths that we need to build on. And they are relevant in the sense of living in the world of data. What are these strengths? Well, of course, demographic dividend, the average age of country being 27 years, nearly, okay. And so this is a window of opportunity. Young people with a lot of energy, with a lot of ideas, with risk-taking ability, and so on. But this window of opportunity would not be open forever. Another 35 years, give or take 2 years plus minus two, that our population would be aging like everywhere else. So it would turn into a liability. The dividend, it doesn't take very long to turn into a liability. So we must fully respect data and everything that goes with data and youth. I don't trust anybody over the age of 45, 50 to work with machine learning. So therefore, we must fully empower our youth now.
Ashutosh sir, your audio, sir. Ashutosh sir. Ashutosh sir. Ashutosh sir.
I think he can't hear us.
Um,
Is largely driven by software, in particular, is driven by algorithms which are based on machine learning. Uh, Cyber physical systems are the kings of the future. Industry 4.0, robotics, Internet of Things, Internet of Everything, blockchain, no matter what you call it, you get the idea, right? And it's all happening now. So point is, how do we bring back our businesses to integrate with what's happening now, and what is it that we need to do more in that direction? And see, so there are different kind of things. There is, of course, things change by business as usual, which is what I call in Hindi dhanda. Things also change, especially in our country and some other countries, by what you call another mode of problem solving, which is called jugaad. Now, jugaad, of course, we have come a long way as a nation, as a society with that concept. But you really have to think hard now. Now is the time to think hard about it and realize that jugaad is not an optimal solution, that this is not a solution which is scalable. There's not a solution which is a globally acceptable solution. Jugaad is something we live with in order to die another day, which means, okay, let me solve my problem by hook or by crook today. It's very critical that I do it today. Fine, there's no problem with that. And we can certainly rely on Jugaad to do that, but not as a culture, not as a very deep foundation on which we build everything. चलता है, quality है, कुछ होगा, देख लेंगे कल, right? Maybe I'll be transferred, maybe the world will not be here, I will certainly not be here, and so on. So that the days of Jugaad are long past us. No patchwork solutions anymore. What that means, basically, there's squarely, there are two other modes that are available to us for solving a problem, which is one of them I call dhanda, which is a stable, continuous way of doing business, very much required, no great disruptions. And the third one is panga. Panga is a disruptive change. And oftentimes, the times they call for disruptive change. And there is the rise of digital technologies and intelligent machines basically brings home that urgency. And of course, we ought not to forget in all of this, when we talk about digital things, when I talk about Industry 4.0, artificial intelligence, what have you, one very critical thing that we ought to remember, a question that I ask in every technology that we want to support, that we want to bring into policy and so on. What is unique about this technology for India? What is the India-centric view of this technology? If you were to just take this, okay, the rise of artificial intelligence and so on, clearly is going to destroy some jobs of a certain nature, which means that I need to generate new set of skills. But even more importantly, I need to be able to do things I was not able to do before. Other words, I enlarge the scope of the business. I'm able to reach larger number of people. I'm able to have more number of products and services and technologies pressed into service. So if all of that is made possible by any of these technologies, then we are a net gainer, right? So this is something which is very nation centric. Okay, it's not somebody country XYZ which does not have young people and therefore they don't have the same problem. In other words, for many of these societies to grow further economically, it would be necessary to have machines that replace people, right? So now this requires clearly a little bit of deep thinking about what our needs and our opportunities and our challenges and threats are. Uh, and that ought to be a part of every mission. So by the way, we started this mission called Cyber Physical Systems at a cost of 4,000 crores last year, which is going to set up a huge ecosystem for everything from IoT to robotics, blockchain, even ethics, a whole lot of things, everything you can think of in terms of cyber digital on one hand, fusing the physical on the other hand, right, which is the whole world actually. So the reason I'm saying this is because this is a great opportunity for industry, academia, and the government to work together. The architecture and structure of this mission is such that there's a 1/3 stakeholding by each of these three triple helix strands, right? So industry and of course PSU is a part of that industry, and I want that they should take advantage of all the human resources and all the infrastructure that's going to be created at a cost of 4,000 crores in the next 4 years. And then, of course, this is only the beginning. This is not the end. This is the foundational layer. It has a beginning, but it has no end. Okay, so the only other thing that's going to happen in the future, together with the convergence of cyber, digital, and physical, on one side and the other side, the only new element going in the future would be convergence of biological and life with digital, cyber, and physical, right? So we make very exciting times, no matter how you look at it. So whoever actually runs this race a little bit faster, is going to take the leadership. It's no longer about leapfrogging. I don't that much particularly fond of frogs, but it's about pole vaulting, if you would, right? Many of those things have happened. So if we can be part of that change rather than resist that change. Look, even in my ministry, going into the time of virus, we were doing about 65% business by electronic means. But as soon as we entered the time of virus, within 2 weeks, we have 100% electronic business. There is no paper that comes into my office. There is no paper that leaves my office. There are no files. There is nothing. Every single thing is actually done digitally, right? From all the way from the section head to the minister, right? And how did that become possible? You see, look, COVID-19 has taught us many things, and I'm sure that many of them will get translated into the policy that we are putting up together, and many of them will become part of our life and thinking. And many of those things are, just to give you an example, look, just 3 months ago, we were importing ventilators. Right now, this is not such a big deal. I'm sure that any PSU, any industry, anybody can do it. But it's just that we did not have the convergence of interest and a very clear thinking about the objectives and where we need to be in how much time, right? Our objectives were not clear and present, and it was not a shared goal. Now, what I saw in this time, that, okay, so first of all, in just 2 months, right, with the participation of academia, which brings in knowledge sector, with the participation from the beginning of the industry and startups, with the participation from the beginning of the support from the government. If a director IIT called me late one night and said, I have cash flow problems. We are putting together this ventilator. I need 50 lakhs by tomorrow morning. We got it over to them. Now, you've never seen government work like this before, have you? Right? Or even PSU work like that, for that matter, right? So you see, we were committed. Everybody was committed to that certain cause of doing it because nobody else was going to help us in this. And see, a ventilator has 150 different parts. It required experts from 8 different areas of science and engineering to come together, right? Work not in competition mode, but in the mode of cooperation, right? And industry was there, so it's not simply about, hey, I can design it, but who's going to make the plastic part? Who's going to make the electronics? Who's going to do this? Design, prototyping, right? All of that was happening in parallel. And so today we have capacity of making 3 lakh top of the line ventilators per year. You can export, right? How did that happen? It never happened in 10 years. It's just one example. There are so many different examples, right? And so we can learn from there. I think that PSU had done a great job during this time. So many success stories that I know of. Even old mentors working together for no money, nothing in it for them, right? How did that happen? So I think all of this, of course, happened because of these reasons that I pointed out, and then a lot of it happened through convergence, make use of digital technologies. Look at some of the designs of these ventilators. This is half the cost and twice as good as the ones that we were importing forever. Why? Because when you design something new, you have the best of technology in there, which means you can bring in IoT, you can bring in artificial intelligence, you can have one doctor monitoring remotely operation of 10 different ventilators and patients. So you see this innovation, we have no lack of innovation. Oftentimes people are saying, look, we are too academic, our science, our IITs, our R&D labs, they are not producing anything. That's not true. So I'll come to the point right away. And this will become very clear in the policy, right? You see, India today, with all its constraints, is number 3 in the world in terms of number of scientific publications, science and engineering publications, right? This is not a small thing, okay? So, often we ought to be very critical of ourselves all the time, but we cannot be super critical in those areas which are not based on evidence. So what is our weakness? So our weakness is not the deep strength in R&D. Our weakness is that R&D not getting to industry and market. So which brings us to the point that the connect between these systems that produce knowledge and the systems that consume knowledge is either very weak or non-existent, or that there is no understanding between these two sectors about the role of knowledge in the future. Look, it doesn't matter how we were in a different way. We were not worried about technology. We were not worried about global competitiveness and all of that. And so therefore we assume that really I'm not the one to worry about technology innovation to be at the cutting edge. It's somebody else's business. When I need something, I will have a global tender, and I will just get from wherever it's available, right? That doesn't always work, and that's one of the things that COVID-19 has shown us as well, right? There are critical things that nobody will give you in the times of need, and even beyond that, you see. So this thing about Atmanirbhar Bharat, the very clear call by Honorable Prime Minister. What did it take? So Atmanirbhar Bharat often is mistaken or equated only with manufacturing, but manufacturing comes later. You see, so what it means is Atmanirbhar Bharat requires a knowledge chain from knowledge generation to knowledge consumption, and both of them working together. A very simple way to put it is for Lakshmi and Saraswati to respect each other, to see each other's value, right? Value for oneself. So if the Lakshmi says, look, what Saraswati brings to me, I would only want to increase my size, right? That appreciation and how to actually use that, right? How do we empower that, right? So that is the critical factor. Other way you can put it, look, there is a push of knowledge and there is a pull of knowledge. The pull of knowledge has to come from industry, it has to come from PSUs, it has to come with all of that, right? And in fact, even a clear direction about what is needed in terms of generation of knowledge. That is very vital. So very simply put, I'm saying, let's move unhindered in all the new technologies which are coming up at us at the speed, and do the and work at the connectivity, understanding what our long-term interests are. And so anyway, all of our missions of the future, the missions which are related to cyber physical systems, there is one coming up at a cost of 8,000 crores, which is on quantum technologies, quantum communication, quantum computing, quantum materials, quantum devices, quantum cryptography, whole lot of things. Look, all of that is the future. So why not get into it a little bit early? Another mission which is going on is supercomputing mission at a cost of 4,500 crores, which is setting up 50 supercomputers across the country. And I want industry, I want PSUs to take full advantage of that. Somehow, these systems for connecting have been weak. So let me, I don't know how much time. Are you, Mr. Sobati, are you there?
Yes, sir, you can.
Mr.
So this is
Yeah,
Samriddhi, sir.
Yes, sir.
how much time do we got?
Uh,
We are past our time. Is that correct?
yeah. But you can take some time, sir. Very interesting,
No.
sir.
See, it's very dangerous. If you tell me take some time, it's terribly dangerous. Let me tell you that. Okay, because I'm a professor, right? There are two kind of people you cannot get away from mic. One is a professor, other is a poet. Right? So you don't need to suffer me. I would conclude very quickly. And so what I wanted to say, look, there are many opportunities being created in digital area, in cyber area, in fusion of digital cyber with physical, and is coming up from the government side. We are setting up centers called Sati, which are for MSMEs, which are for PSUs, any kind of industry, which are has all the high tech equipment in it. Not everybody can set up their own R&D. So each of these centers are at an investment of 150 crores, whole lot of things professionally managed under one roof. And so all of that, right? There are, we talked about tourism sector. There's a rise of compelling technologies in AR, VR, mixed reality, augmented reality, and so on. In fact, we have supported several startups in that area, which have such interesting products, right? So here, you create by 3D printing a replica of Humpy or anything, right? And then you take a virtual walk in it with a pen light. You can define the path on which you want to walk, and then you would see what you would have seen if you were walking on that path in that monument. So there are hundreds of examples like that. The whole point that I want to, submit to, all our people listening from PSU sector, that look, we need structures for that connect. We need a culture. It's not going to happen spontaneously. It's like things lost in translation, right? So unless we have a Panga wing, which is looking at the disruptive things on the horizon and the future of each of our enterprises, and unless we have an interface, which is an interface between this and this, between two knowledge sectors, the knowledge generators and knowledge consumers, and that somehow homogenize this interface, right? So unless we create a structure like that in each of the enterprises as a culture, right, watching out for the rise of technologies that are going to impact us and where to actually be start working on them now and start developing and getting them now. You see, we cannot just do everything at the last moment. Um, so there are a whole lot of things. I mean, if you look at digital opportunities, you see, it's very interesting. We just released a white paper. This is called, as you can see, Make in India Post COVID-19 white paper. And then there's stuff, if you look at pharmaceuticals business, what are the bottlenecks? There are a whole lot of things, right? But we need actually a little cell, a little think tank in every large size enterprise, because at the end of it, these are all lost, right? These are like lost. You take a bucket full of water and throw it in desert. It disappears faster than I don't know what, right? So now we are looking at, actually, we are mapping, for example, the skills of migrant labor, and also what opportunities are available for them, right? So digitally, we put it in a map and everything. And so people are looking for, look, I want somebody with this skill set. Where is such a person available? And this person, without randomly going about in a metropolis looking for a job, right? It's about matchmaking, it's about connecting. Another very good example, and I'll certainly close after that, is the digital mapping of the country at 10-centimeter level. It has never happened before. You can imagine that if you don't have a map, then you have nothing. And so Survey of India, which works with us, right, we have now fully empowered it with new technologies of mapping, with drones, with LiDAR, with everything, right? So now the race is on. As you would, maybe some of you would recall that Honorable PM had announced this scheme called Samitwa scheme. Basically, revolutionary. It will go so far, because you see, people today in rural areas, even other areas, they don't even know what they own. There are litigations going on forever, right? So every little parcel of land is going to be mapped, right? Once and for all, forever pegged, right? Every property geotagged. And this is a hugely ambitious task. And this is not going to happen with our 250-year-old technologies. I'm saying 250 years old because Survey of India is actually that old, right? It's only in the last 3 years that I have been able to convince them to abandon their chains and theodolites and start working with the rest of the world, right? And so I have indeed concluded now. I'm so sorry I took a little bit longer than I should have. And I'm saying, look, digital, cyber, but the fusion of that with a whole lot of materials, with mechanics, with machines is the future. And we already ought to be thinking about integrating the biology in there, which is the final frontier to boldly go where no person has gone before. Right? Thank you so much, so very much If there are any later on, if there are questions or anything, I would again repeat my appeal that please help us with making an effective science, technology, innovation policy. 2020 is for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. It's indeed mesmerizing listening to you, sir. Even we lost track of time. Well, sir, 13th is definitely not unlucky for us. It's lucky for Scope, as we could have you on the platform with us. And certainly, sir, with your encouragement and the innovative work that Department of Science and Technology and Government of India has been doing, I am absolutely certain that PSCs will lead the way in making most of the opportunity that this little virus had put out for us. Now, before we move forward with the technical sessions, I would like to brief everyone about the Q&A modalities that we would be following in the webinar. All the attendees can post their questions in the question answer tab that's given on your screens during the presentation, and then the panelists will be taking them up one by one. So now we are we would have the presentation from KPMG. So with this, I introduce KPMG team. We have with us Manas Majumdar, Partner Strategy and Transformation, KPMG India. His experience spans over 2 decades in strategic management roles in power and utilities, oil and gas and chemicals and processes industry. His recent focus has been digital transformation and leveraging digital technology for growing across markets. We also have with us Sushant Rabra, Partner KPMG India. He has over 15 years of experience with KPMG and presently leads the digital transformation services practice of KPMG India. His recent projects include driving business value from tech transformation. He has also worked with many SOEs in India and abroad on digital agenda. With this, I hand over the platform to Sushant for the presentation. Over to you, Sushant.
Thank you so much, Samriddhi. And before I start the presentation today, I must say it was amazing listening to you, Professor Sharma. The vision that you laid out for the country and what does it mean for us to be Atmanirbhar in the true sense, and the way R&D as well as industry need to come together for India to achieve its destiny, I would say, and the right place in the world. That was really mesmerizing. And I was just seriously taking notes. This is the second time I got a chance to hear you on a public forum. And I would say always there is a takeaway for me whenever I go back. Thank you so much for that, sir. Now, we will start our session on going into a deeper view on the digital transformation agenda and understand what does digital transformation mean. So today, between me and my colleague partner Manas, we would like to take you through what are the key technologies that constitute digital today. And you have been hearing a lot about that in the papers, in media. Let's demystify this a bit for you, and let's go into each of these technologies for some time. Then, as it was being mentioned earlier, technology for technology's sake does not help anybody. So what is the business impact for that? And how those technologies can be made real, especially in the post-COVID world, for the SOEs to create business value. So that is the topic that we will cover. And finally, that if you have to embark on that journey, typically what is the roadmap? What are the pillars that you should think about on that journey? So we'll cover that. So let me first start saying what is digital. Now, if I was to ask this question from everybody on this webinar, I'm sure I'll get, we have 300 attendees, 300 different answers. Everybody has their own favorite definition of what digital is. Well, we have been also grappling with this question, and we came out with the view on digital, which has got fair bit of acceptance when we talk to our clients. So what is digital? Digital is about business impact or business values that you can drive by using emerging technology. So if you can look at the box on the left, which is the blue circle, here we talk about the kind of outcomes that you can see from digital. And these could be outcomes around revenue and market and new products and new services. This could be outcomes around cost, efficiency that you bring home because of digital. And in fact, digitization, or if I was to take a broader view on technology enablement, has classically been positioned in that domain. The third theme is experience. And that has also become a very important theme theme these days, because it is about the experience that your customers have with you, or your employees have with you, or your business partners have with you. Those experiences define stickiness, loyalty, and eventually business success in today's world. Now, all of you shop online, I'm sure. You all have a favorite e-commerce player that you go to. Hello? Yeah.
Sushant, yeah, I'm sorry, but your video has frozen.
All right, just give me a second. Let me see if I can turn it back up again.
Please.
Meanwhile, I'll just switch this off and continue. Maybe there is a network impact. So,
Sushant, we have lost your audio as well. Hello? Manas, would you
Hello?
like to take up? Hello?
Yeah, let's see if
Oh.
Sushant is back. Otherwise, Sushant, can you go ahead?
Manas?
Sushant, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we
Yes,
can
we
hear you.
can-
Go ahead.
Yes, please go
Sure.
ahead, Sushant.
Yeah. So maybe just in interest of the bandwidth, let me just focus here. All right. The third theme I was talking about was on experience. Hello?
Yeah, Sushant, please go ahead.
Okay. So experience, I was saying you all have a favorite e-commerce player that you work with, right? The reason that you go with one e-commerce platform versus other is often the experience that you get there. Right? Similarly, for example, if I was to say in terms of public sector organizations, then the core product is undifferentiated or relatively less differentiated. For example, if it's oil retailing, right? Then people go to that provider, which can give them a differentiation in terms of brand positioning or differentiation in terms of experience. And in today's world, digital has a large role to play in providing that superlative experience for your customers. And the last dimension of impact is on innovation, as it was being mentioned earlier. Digital brings more opportunities on your table, be it new products, new services, new ways to reach out to your customers, or to innovate with your ecosystem partners. And these all four are the four axes of impact that you should consider when you're talking about digital in your organization. These axes of impact become possible because of the technologies that you see on the right-hand side, right? There are maybe 10, 12 technologies listed here, but there are multiple technologies which are considered digital in today's age. Now, if I start counting, there'll be more than 50 or 60 such technologies as we speak. Now, for you to drive value out of that would depend on the enablers that you see at the bottom. And this is to have a cohesive digital strategy, one. Second, to have a digital organization which can drive this change within your company. Now, this has to be a multidisciplinary and not only technology team which drives this change. The third one is on value realization. Digital in many cases is seen as something which is oversold and underdelivered. So how do you track and manage the value of digital in your organization is also very important. The fourth theme is around risk management, right? When you go about digital transformation programs, you also have to manage the risk which comes with it. If everything goes digital, then you also have to manage things around cybersecurity, governance and control. If algorithms are making most of the decisions, then how do you ensure that it is above board in terms of decision making from a corporate governance perspective and compliances? So you need to manage the entire layer at the bottom to drive value for the organization. Now, with that definition of digital, I would like to take you through what are the technologies which are on the digital radar today. Now, this is something that we do fairly frequently. We update it every year. This is called the emerging technology radar. Now, as you can see in this radar, we are saying there are 3 time horizons from now to 5 years, 5 to 10 years, and then on to 15. The technologies which are towards the center are the technologies which are already being leveraged by organizations around the world, and they are reasonably mature. And as you go more and more out from the radar, these are technologies which are in the exploratory stage. You can also see that the technologies are aligned in certain themes. For example, technologies aligned to experience, technologies aligned to artificial intelligence or platforms and so on. And the size of the bubble denotes the impact that these technologies have for the organization. Right? Now, what I wanted to drive home over here is that we all talk about digital as if it is something which is going to come. Digital is already here and now. We don't even realize the amount of digital technologies which are there in our day-to-day lives. If you today morning look at Google Maps to go where you went, you are already using IoT, using GPS, you are using machine learning. If you are using Alexa at your home, if you are shopping online, if you're doing, even video-based surveillance, anything that you do on a day-to-day basis, right? You are using digital technologies, and they have pretty much become part of the background, and we don't even notice them anymore. I will spend a few minutes now to go through some of these technologies and give a quick perspective on the
Sushant, I am so sorry to interfere, but your slide is not changing, I believe. Are we?
Yes, I think Sushant is still on the first page. I think the technology radar.
All right. Then may I request, Smriti, do you want to bring up the presentation? Looks like there is some issue.
We can do that. We can do that. No problem. No problem. You can discuss. You can keep discussing the slide. We'll get the presentation on.
Sure. All right. Sure. So we'll start off. All right. So can you see the page on machine learning now?
Yes. Yes. Now we can see.
Okay,
now we can
great.
see.
So I wanted to first start with machine learning. Out of all the technologies which are out there, I would say the one which is currently getting a lot of traction, and in my opinion, one of the most promising, is the development which is happening in artificial intelligence and machine learning. So while most of us take these two names interchangeably in the same breath, but there is of course a fine line of difference between artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, and so on. Now, for somebody who's a business user, you don't need to get into the differentiation. If I was to just give a broad view on how it works, I will give an example of how you teach a child of what, let's say, is a ball. So you show that ball to the child once, and the child understands, right? Saying here is a ball. Next time he sees that object, he understands. Now, to get same kind of understanding from computer systems takes a little bit more data. What you have to do is, of course, train the systems which are mimicking human brain. That is called neural networks. They are mimicking human brains to start learning about things which are taught to them. And that was the classical supervised learning mechanism. Then the world moved on, and we moved on to unsupervised or semi-supervised learning mechanisms, where the machine learning algorithms discovered pattern in large data sets by themselves. And that is where you hear about AI and ML being used by large retailers, for example, to find out pattern in shoppers' behavior. And then it has taken multiple shapes going forward from there. But all the themes that you see here on this slide, they are primarily focused on what is called as task-specific AI or a narrowband AI. Right? It's very good in doing what it does. So if you have an AI program, for example, Alexa at home, which recognizes your voice, it is very good at recognizing your voice. But maybe the same algorithm is not very good at driving cars or identifying potential forest fires from an image and so on, right? So there are different algorithms, and there are different ways they are trained to be effective. Of course, the holy grail for any of the machine learning scientists is the move towards the general artificial intelligence, which will mimic human behavior, and sometimes people say even awareness in a very logical manner. We are some distance away from that, but on the specific use cases, these narrow use cases, the artificial intelligence algorithms have started to outperform humans very well. And this could be use cases, as you can see here. These are in drug discovery, for example. When COVID struck us, one of the first company to develop the response to COVID in terms of what the possible vaccine structure could be was a company based out of the US, which developed the designable molecule in less than 8 hours, right? 8 hours. So once they got the structure of the virus, they ran large-scale simulation programs and said, these are the characteristics of a potential vaccine molecule, and therefore we can direct our research there. If you were to do that by humans, possibly it will take years to do that kind of research, right? And so while we are all aware of these headline-grabbing use cases, there are a lot of mundane day-to-day use cases of artificial intelligence which are adding value to the top line and the bottom line of organizations. I want to just take one example here. This is about one of our clients. This is a global metals group. They were grappling with an issue about frequent downtimes, unexpected failures in some of their manufacturing chains, and that was causing them millions of dollars in lost productivity, repair, overtime, and of course, loss of market share. Now, what they did is they actually implemented deep sensorization on the entire production chain, and they started getting hundreds of thousands of tags or data points about the entire chain. All this data is coming back on to a centralized system, and from there, it was being put on to AI systems to learn from and identify what are those parameters which can potentially predict a potential system downtime. And they were reasonably successful at that. Now you can see the actual statistics, which in their particular case, they could eventually predict the imminent failure up to 7 days in advance. And the accuracy of this prediction was about 81%. It was outstanding. In 81% of the cases, they could predict when the equipment is going to fail, when this huge production chain is going to break, and take corrective action within those 7 days. Yes, 20% cases, they still could not, but that was a massive improvement in terms of the bottom line that the company was able to save. There are tons of such examples, especially in case of AI, but in interest of time, I'll move forward. Was about 81%. Now, while I spoke about AI, my next favorite topic is quantum, and Professor Sharma also spoke about it. Yes.
Shant, I'm so sorry, but your slides are not moving. So I would be displaying the slides from my end. You can just let us know when to change the slide, okay?
Sure, absolutely.
Thank
you. Let me disconnect from my side then.
I think, Samriddhi, if you could move to the next page, I think, yes, this one.
Yes.
Yeah, this was the case study that Sushant was talking about, and we can move to the next page as well. Yeah, Sushant, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not able to see the screen right now.
You're on page 8 now. You're on page 8 on, yeah.
Sure, that's fine. I'll go with that, no problem. All right, so here I'll talk about quantum computing. Now, the reason why quantum computing is so exciting is it can just scale up whatever we discussed by a factor of, I would say, thousands or 100,000s. Now, if you were following the papers last October, Google announced quantum supremacy. Now, what does that mean in simple terms? What it means is that they have created quantum computers which could solve a particular problem in about 200 seconds, which a normal computer will take 10,000 years to solve. And just look at the scale of difference between the two. So what is so special about quantum computing? See, so far, all our computing has been based on the standard bits, ones and zeros. Everybody knows that. Now, in the quantum computing space, what you're doing is you're taking advantage of quantum states. Now, quantum states could be between 1 and 0. And therefore, when you manipulate qubits, which can take multiple states between two defined states, you can carry out tasks much more faster as compared to a standard computer. And that's why you see that difference in the scale, as I shared in the case study with you. In fact, quantum computing is expected to completely revolutionize machine learning, cryptography, molecular genomics, and so on. And it is possibly seen as the future of computing in the world. And that is one of the reasons why nations worldwide are investing on quantum computing. And we heard Mr. Sharma also talk about how India is also focusing on quantum computing, and we are creating special centers of excellence around that. If you can move to the next slide, please. I would like to then talk about augmented reality. Now, it's been around for a while, and initially we thought it's more suited for gaming, and that's where it has been used. However, we have seen a lot of business uses of augmented reality now. We are looking at use cases in industrial design, remote monitoring, engineering, maintenance, mining and construction. There's a host of use cases which are being built up on augmented reality. So far, augmented reality had not kicked off because of two reasons. One, the devices that people used to wear for augmentation, they sort of were not very comfortable for long run, and eventually there was a gagging reflex which will happen if people were in the artificial world for too long. But how those problems are getting solved is that now people are looking at devices which are much more lighter. They can provide fairly realistic rendering of the artificial world right in front of you, as well as it is a mixed reality model which is being followed as compared to a classical fully immersive reality model. So there are a lot of solutions. For example, one of our clients is looking at remote maintenance. So for if they have got specialists sitting in one center of excellence, which are these super maintenance engineers, and they have this army of maintenance engineers who are going out in the field. In a normal world, let's say you're going to a wind turbine and trying to find out and rectify what the problem is, you will need to bring in the experts and specialists. But now in the augmented reality space, that is all happening on an AR platform. So this super engineer or super specialist is able to guide the mid-skilled person on ground where exactly to look and what exactly to fix. And that is happening as we speak. I'll move to the next slide. This is a topic of everybody's interest, blockchain. Blockchain, of course, gets confused with cryptocurrency all the time, but these are some things which are similar, and one is using the other, but not exactly the same. Now, blockchain as a concept essentially focuses on something called a distributed ledger. Now, what is so important about distributed ledger? See, in a classical technology system, the trust comes from a dedicated source, and that's why you have these SSL. When you look at all these secure websites that you go to, or when you access your corporate systems, essentially there is a secure, trusted source of information, and everybody goes to that secure central place. But what people realize is that there are a lot of interactions where that central system per se cannot exist. So you have to have a distributed trust model. There has to be a mechanism in which people can trust that information which is being provided to them on a real-time basis without always referring to a central authority. And that's how blockchains came into way. Blockchain essentially is a blocks of information which are signed off or encoded by the security keys of people who have worked on that before, so that the person who gets their blockchain is very sure that this has never been tampered with and it's an authenticated copy of the information. Without going into technicalities, essentially what is the use case? Use case is wherever you need trust in a distributed environment and immediate validation, you can use blockchain. Examples of use cases, for example, insurance. Examples are, for example, you can look at the property deeds and property ownership, and so on. So wherever you need that document or that blockchain-enabled contract to come to you and stay with you, and people to validate that this is authenticated, you can use blockchain. There's a lot of effort going on, especially in the financial services, healthcare, and government space to leverage blockchain. UAE, for example, has already gone ahead on blockchain-based property registration system. So frankly, if you buy a house in UAE today, you will get a blockchain-based registration deed, and that you can keep with you. All right, and anybody can validate. I'll move to the next slide, please, which is on IoT. Now, IoT as a subject needs no introduction. Amongst various digital technologies, IoT has been around for a long time. Of course, it's been called by different names. For all our colleagues from SOEs who are out there, they will probably remember a term OT, operations technology, and IoT has sort of evolved forward from there as there was increased IT-OT integration and when you centralized everything in the chain. Now, by some accounts, IoT is going to be one of the biggest value adds from digital perspective into the world economy. Some people estimate as much as $500 billion worth of economic value to be added to the world because of IoT and IoT enabled products. Now you have IoT pretty much everywhere. You have IoT enabled home devices, you have IoT enabled cars, you have IoT enabled equipment and so on and so forth, which make all of these devices much more smarter and allow them to be manipulated and tracked remotely. We had a case study here, which is from one of our clients, where they essentially digitized the entire shop floor and brought down the incident rate and identified the impact of incident in the organization and took actions to optimize that. IoT is also being used, for example, on logistics or traceability, as well as for provenance when you need that particular product to be securely delivered from one part to another. Before we move to the next one, I just want to highlight one point around IoT that from the smart cities mission that we have in India, IoT and digitization at that layer is one of the strongest area which is being focused upon. And I must say I'm quite enthused by the innovation that we are seeing in that space from Indian startups. There are tons of Indian startups doing outstanding work in IoT. Let's move forward on to robotics. Right. Now, from a robotics perspective, industrial robots in the developed countries have already displaced large part of humans from the production supply chain. So if you look at the penetration of robots per $1 million of capital investment, it's fairly high in countries like Korea, China, Japan, and so on. Now, initially, it used to be thought that's primarily because of the demographic those countries have and their focus on large-scale manufacturing. But over the last few years, robotics has become fairly commonplace and have come on to other organizations as well. So we were working with a large manufacturing company where they have completely digitized and robotized their warehouse, for example. So the picking, binning, tracking, everything is done by autonomous robots. And the warehouse, which used to run on more than 400 to 500 people, is able to run on less than 20% of the workforce, which was there earlier, with much higher success rates and fill rates, right? Now, while we all talk about robots, now these robots are also being used, for example, in things like patient care, right? When you have a long-term patient care, robots are being used over there, material handling, hazardous waste, order management, package delivery, and so on and so forth. What is being anticipated is that some large areas which are transactional, which are manual in nature, robots are going to replace humans from those domains in the next 5 to 7 years. I'll move forward on to drones. Yes, thanks. Now coming on to drones, of course, we are all seeing drones being used for entertainment purposes. But what we see in the future is drones to play a very important role in hyperlocal logistics space. So this could be in terms of emergency services, hyperlocal delivery, and so on. It also has a very strong applications from military perspective. Drones are already being used. For example, the Reaper drone from the US was heavily used in the Middle East during the conflict there, right? So drones are seen as force multipliers in the defense area, as well as they shoulder the responsibility in tough to operate terrain, where you need to have live visuals, you need to have real-time data collation, as well as transportation of essentials in hard to reach places. So for example, we have seen certain startups which are delivering vaccines to remote villages in India, in the hilly areas, using drones today. What we see is that these drones both airborne as well as underwater drones are going to increase in number. And what we see is that the regulatory regime around that is also coming forward as we speak. Let's move to the next one. Autonomous vehicles. So what drones are to the air and water, autonomous vehicles are onto the ground. There is a fair degree of work happening in this space today. We all hear about the autonomous vehicles and what they're doing in the US as well as in China. But I must mention that there is cutting edge work happening right here in India. And one of the reasons I was talking to one of the promoter who has built these solutions out of India, I said, why did you build this out of India? And do you have the right ecosystem available? He says, more than ecosystem, what I have available here is unparalleled, learning ground. I said, why? He said, if my autonomous vehicle can run in India with so many different obstructions and hard to predict changes, then I'm sure they can do well anywhere in the world. But that was on a lighter note, but I can definitely mention that from a distribution, military, or consumer perspective, autonomous vehicles are the future. The way we used to say electric vehicles are the future, and they are already here. Autonomous vehicles, in our view, would start appearing increasingly in the landscape in the next 4 to 5 years in India. I will take the last one, and before we jump into the subsequent section, this is around 3D printing. Now, Mr. Sharma also spoke about 3D printing as a focus area. Now, 3D printing not only for manufacturing and to provide precision engineered parts, spare parts, customer products, and so on, but also wider aspects. For example, there is now bio 3D printing. So people are actually printing organs. They are printing kidneys, and they are trying to experiment with livers and others. On the 3D printing side, there is large-scale 3D printing happening for ready-to-assemble structures. Right? We have seen that about bridges, sections being made from 3D printing, or housing structure being made at scale through 3D printing, and so on and so forth. And that's one area which is definitely going to see much more traction as we go forward. This definitely helps to have that kind of ecosystem in India, because in India we are going to see a lot of cutting edge work happening in core engineering, defense, and aerospace sector as we go forward, as these are some of the priorities that we hear from the overall economy perspective, and therefore 3D printing will have a large role to play over there. Now, moving to the next slide, right? We heard about all these digital technologies, and I'm sure this is not the first time you heard about them, right? How does this all come home? What is the impact? So if you were to look at all these technologies, I would again reiterate, it's not important what these technologies are, and you'll have, I'm sure, specialists in your organization which will handle these technologies and make sure they work for you. But I think as business leaders who are all there on the call today, I think we should focus on what is the impact they can drive on the right-hand side. Now, is this about faster growth? Is this about revenue and margins? Is it about speed and automation of your organization, scalability, new products, new channels, new markets? These are the themes that you will have to identify from your side and see how you leverage these technologies as you are going forward. So we had a quick quiz in that sense. If we have a minute here, I'll request attendees to give us a view on this slide. Now, while we all spoke about digital, and we said, yes, digital is something which will happen, but I wanted to showcase, take your thoughts and showcase to you that it's not something out there in the future, it's already here. So for example, if I was to talk about the world's largest taxi company, which doesn't own any taxis, any assets so far, or the largest accommodation provider, which doesn't own any assets, the largest phone company, you'll be surprised, is none of the ones that we use today, or the most valuable retailers, or the popular firm that create no content, but they are the largest media companies in the world. They are all digital businesses, right? And we have seen probably these examples before. Oftentimes we get a question saying, yeah, that is all good for a Uber or an Airbnb or a Facebook, but what does it mean for me? Is it real? Is it something that is going to impact me? I am a state-owned enterprise. So what can I do on digital? So we thought that instead of talking about that, why don't we look at a video where a state-owned enterprise is giving you a sneak preview on their digital journey. Now, with that, can we start the video, please?
Yes, sure. Sushant, just starting it off.
Sure. So while this is coming up, this is about ADNOC.
The Abu Dhabi National Oil Company is the state-owned oil company of Abu Dhabi and the principal catalyst for the Emirates development. With 14 integrated organizations operating across the hydrocarbon value chain, ADNOC is one of the world's leading energy producers.
We are an energy company of the future. We produce around 3 million barrels. We can go up to 3.5 million barrels. But associated with that is a huge amount of gas, almost 10 billion cubic foot of gas that we produce.
ADNOC is maximizing value from reserves and operations and helping to drive its digital transformation is Aviva.
Between Aviva and ADNOC is a very special relationship. It's one that's based on a belief of this digitalization of the industry. Aviva has been a trusted partner of ADNOC for many, many years. It's not that normal to see them partnering with us in the digital transformation.
No stranger to global market volatility, oil and gas producers are using industrial IoT, big data, advanced visualization, and artificial intelligence to integrate and maximize return across asset and operation value chains.
If we want to have an ensure digital transformation, there are some crucial failure steps that we have to go through, and that is to allocate, centralize, and integrate all our data on one single platform.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Smriti, for showing that. As you saw there, this is a state-owned enterprise which leverages digital, and some of this content is also available publicly. If you can have a look at it, they created value more than $100 million for that organization by using digital and the interventions they are showcasing out here in front of them. Now, what it means is that there is enough value sitting in digital for all of us. The only thing that is open is the area that we want to focus on and our priorities for your organization. Yeah, now, sorry. Yeah, sure. And with that, I'll hand over to Manas to take us through the subsequent section.
Great. I'll kind of, I'm conscious of time, so I'll kind of go through this. So we talked about some of the technologies that are already here and how it is impacting us, right? And more importantly, it's not so much the technology, but what is the use case that is really happening and what is the impact on the business, right? So it's not just the Facebooks and Microsofts of the world who are doing it, but of course the likes of ADNOC, right? Now, in all these disruptions, let's not forget, we are in the midst of a COVID-19 disruption, right? So there were some disruptions we expected. We knew digital was coming or is there. We knew climate change is there. We knew mobility, EVs, etc. But clearly what we got instead are lockdowns, right? We saw economies, kind of shrinking significantly, demand shocks. We saw oil prices becoming negative, right? Albeit it was futures and it was only in the US, but those were disruptions we saw. And because of that, how do we adapt, right? And what are the new ways of working when people are working from home as a disruption? How do you align our supply chains once the supply chain is fragmented, right? So, during the months when China was not operational fully, how did we re-gear ourselves to do that, right? So while these are things that are coming to light, there are more that are probably unknown, right? Now, in that context, if you move to the next page, there are a few questions that one needs to look at. Samriddhi, Naushad, can we move to the next page? Yeah, and these are questions about, in this midst of COVID-19, how can we work remotely, in an effective manner? Where will that office interaction and that decision making really happen? Are we leveraging our infrastructure properly, right? Are we able to leverage some of the applications and IT systems that we had built adequately? Are we secure when we use some of those applications, right? How are we able to engage not just with our employees, but how are we able to engage with our customers, right, properly? Because in many cases, the customers are in the house, or they're reducing contact, and so on and so forth. And similarly, so on and so forth in terms of your suppliers, as well as your ability to get real-time information and take decisions. Now, with these questions, if we move to the next page, I think the focus, therefore, in terms of a digital-led recovery and transformation that one can look at is in three parts, right? Responding here and now, combating it, because there has been a demand drop. While you are doing that fight, right, or the response, how can you embed some of the resilience at the next level, right? How can you, as Professor Sharma rightly said, use that as an opportunity to build certain capabilities, build certain infrastructure that will help you in not only a black swan event as it happens in the future, but will also help you address some of the challenges coming up on a day-to-day basis. And then, of course, adapting to the new normal. We might not see demand at the same level, or demand in a different form. How do we adapt to that way of working? We might not see as many people traveling. Aviation might get hit to that extent, but can we see other opportunities elsewhere? So within each of these three levels of transformation that we're looking at, I've picked 5 themes, which I'm just going to spend a little bit of time about around the people, the workforce side of it, the automation side of things. How can we manage in the supply chain disruptions, capital projects and analytics, and of course cybersecurity. There are more. It could be around cash flow, liquidity. It could be about customer excellence and customer user experience. But I'm going to just talk a little bit about these 5. So if we start with the employee part of it on the next page, Samriddhi, Naushad. We are already seeing people working remotely. We are already seeing the social cultural touch that you can see on the right hand side not really happening, but you still need to have that connectivity going on, and then you need to ensure that they have all the tools with them to get their job done. And the tools is not just the process and the workflow, but also the necessary data, right? If there is an inflow that is not happening in terms of what is the customer orders coming in, or what are the price points that are there, or what is the current supply chain order book that we have in terms of the trucks going from the terminals, or the rakes that are going. All those data, the tools, the process, and the interconnect from a decision-making perspective need to be maintained, right? Now, this is both the people capability aspect, but also the connectivity aspect, right? So there is both an enterprise IT aspect, but a digital aspect as well, right? So to that extent, this is a strong business theme. We were already looking at digitalizing a lot of this, but COVID, if nothing else, as we can saw from the disruptions in the first page in this section, was about accelerating and enhancing some of those trends. This would have happened, but would probably not have happened as much as it's going to happen now, right? We were probably slowly moving towards a little bit more work from home, having a better mix, but now it's been forced upon us. Now, how do we adapt and make it into the new normal, right? So it is, again, just to reiterate, this business aspect of ensuring our people have the tools, have the data, as well as the ability to communicate like this, as a tool like this GoToWebinar, or many of you might be using Teams or Zoom to communicate, interconnect, and take decisions, and so on and so forth, and also processing files and workflow. So this combination of these 3 things is where digital can really come and play. The other aspect, if you go to the next page, is around outside the organization, right? Beyond the people, the supply chain. How are we connecting to our customers? This map on the left shows what was the COVID intensity, right? And I think one of the key things, if you look at this here, is the fact that it actually affected a large part of the metros, right? So Delhi, you can see parts of Rajasthan, Jaipur, Bombay, Chennai, and to some extent Calcutta, etc. as well, right? So it was an urban phenomena, but it is of course now spreading to tier 2, tier 3 cities as well. But what it means is your demand centers have changed, right? This is at a very country level view that you're looking at, where what used to be a regular supply chain in terms of supplying your finished products to goods, whether this is the likes of an Indian Oil, like Srivedya was saying, or HPCL, BPCL, which are continuously on a day-to-day basis dueling with this, and honestly they've done a very yeoman's job on this, because we've never felt an issue of any petrol pump running dry, LPG cylinders being available, and the ability to adapt because they had that connectivity was significant. The second aspect is ensuring your ability to back down, right? So the integrated production planning with your supply chain forecast and sales planning is your ability to back down. Many of these refineries were able to back down their plants from what used to be 90% utilization levels to 70% and to 50% at the time of April. And now they've again ramped back up again, right? Your ability to connect your manufacturing supply chain to your customer and sales is a key aspect. The second aspect, as we show on the right, is having that visibility, right? What is the demand going to come from? Where are the bottlenecks on my supply chain? What are my analytics that will tell me what is the alternate routing? And we have, of course, here people from Container Corporation, we have people from Shipping Corporation. So while we are looking at this from an India perspective, this is possible for exports and imports as well, right? Which also brings us to the point that we were talking about supply chain disruptions within India, but there has been significant supply chain disruptions that have happened at the global level, right? With China shutting down a significant portion of imports, right? Petrochemicals, which is we import a significant amount, LNG, which is also our gas that we bring in. We have people from GAIL here, is also impacted. The good aspects were, of course, the pricing part of it, but yes, supply chain was impacted. So how do you look at managing both your global supply chain as well as your local supply chain, and having that ability to change and remotely operate is one of the other aspects of a supply chain. So one is the inward feedback, but the other is the outward feedback, where you have a unified command and control center and are able to make decisions almost on a real-time basis based on whatever are the opportunities coming up, or in most cases, as it was in the COVID phase when we were saying combat, adapting to challenges. If something has happened, is there a workaround? Is there a route that we can do? Right. So these are the key aspects that we use analytics, we use visualization, we use AI and ML to do predictive route planning, to both get a perspective of integrating your production and supply chain, ensuring that visibility through sensors and visualization, and then that outward feedback towards control. Now, if we go to the third theme very quickly on automation, I think this was another key aspect that was talked about, right? This kind of goes hand in hand a little bit with the first business theme I talked about on workforce management, right? Which was around how do you ensure that the automata can actually take some of those jobs. Now, we are not saying that humans are going to be replaced. The way to look at it is we are looking at process automation to take up basic routine tasks, right? Which when you do routine tasks, there is a tendency for human errors to creep in, right? But a robot pretty much repeats the process, right? A bot does that. So in areas like supply chain and procurement, in fact, Indian Oil itself, just to share with you, is doing that as part of the iDrive mechanism, where they're looking at material codification to be automated, right? So it doesn't need to be multiple data sets, somebody in Bhatinda doing some material code, where somebody in Vizag is creating another code which is not in match with the standardization and the master data that is there. But that whole process is automated. You just feed in your standard description, it maps it and creates the code as per the norms, as well as able to fetch that data. Similarly, whether it's tax processing, whether it's payroll and salaries, whether it's expense processing, right? Not just automating it, but making it more mobile and accessible, right? So there are these mechanisms of choice of processes and the extreme automation that you can do to ensure that it simplifies the process and makes it more efficient, right? Now, a lot of this is already happening, but it's now about taking it to the next level. And of course, as one of the things that you see on the right-hand side, it's not just HR, finance, tax, and supply chain, but also customer, right? Increasingly, you're speaking to a chatbot, whether it's you're doing it on Amazon, whether you're doing it for your bank, but how can you next use chatbots to sell? most chatbots are, again, as I said, what we call one-way inward, right? In the sense that you ask questions and they feed back to it. But their ability to ask intelligent questions is again the next level of how can you use that experience not only to redress a problem, but create that sales opportunity, right? Or what we used to call cross sales, right? So that's the next level of extreme automation and linking with, again, AI ML, that is the business theme and impact that we can get out of it. If we go to the next theme, which talks about, yes, CapEx and analytics, this is actually a very interesting, and the reason I chose this among many of them is, again, I think one of the aspects Professor Sharma talked about, which was around, a lot of companies are using this to, kind of pull down the shutters and saying, we will wait this through, right? But the really intelligent ones are looking at how can I use these opportunities to strengthen or maybe make acquisitions, right? Or build in projects and lock in rates and lock in contractors at a potentiality which will hold me in good stead, right? So I think while if I were to throw in again some examples, Exxon has reduced their capex spend by $10 billion. That's a 30% cut of what they were planning to do for this year and next year. But while they're doing that, they're also looking to invest in specific projects in petrochemicals, because that is their move of ensuring a diversified base. So I don't think the idea of a demand shock is to say that you cut down all your future opportunities, but it is to take a data-driven call of which opportunities should I shelve and which opportunities can I take up. And this is across the chain, right? So your choice of allocation of capex, like we start in B, your data-driven view of planning that project, then your ability to appraise that project as you're constructing it, and then using analytics-driven progress analysis, 4D visualization to see how is the project getting built up. So across that entire asset life cycle, and in fact using digital twins to really see that 4D and 5D visualization are some of the tools which can first help you decide which projects to take, and then secondly how to do that project appropriately, right? Or the way I say is what are the right projects and how do I do the projects rightly, right? So and then finally the choice of saying that I've already invested in something, or I'm in a JV or a business which I can divest. So those choices both at the entry of an asset like skill as well as an exit, all of these can be enabled, and this can take you to the next level. Take away your long tail, focus on the key priority areas which you believe will give you significant return on investment and long-term value. And these are some of the examples that we are seeing with some of our clients globally, and in fact in India as well. Let's move on to the last page on this, Samriddhi. Yeah. And finally, I want to end on the business themes by saying, while we talked about employees, while we talked about supply chain and customers, while we talked about new opportunities, and we talked about automation for efficiency, all of this is also requires a security wraparound, right? Because as and more data is being processed, as more and more data is accessible on mobile or through usage of sensor on our operational technology, whether it's a compressor which has a meter on it, or a smart meter itself that is checking on our power consumption, all of these elements are open or to that extent vulnerable to that, right? So having that right cyber security layer is equally important to ensure that as we move on that digital layer, we are not leaving ourselves open to certain attacks, right? Because while digital definitely delivers value, and this is the key message we were saying, that it has that significant business impact, it also has certain vulnerabilities which need to be addressed. So as you move forward, you need to make sure that you're not leaving a trail behind which can be captured, and this in its entirety, as was also mentioned by other panelists, is the combination of the digital, the physical, and of course the cyber to that extent, right? So that in an essential is some of the business themes that we are seeing are gaining priority in COVID, cyber more so because most of us are now working from home, and that's some of the things that we thought would leave you behind. Now, with that, let me hand over to Sushant to talk about, we talked about technology, we talked about digital, we talked about some of these business themes. How do you really make it happen? What are those enablers and pillars of success? Sushant?
Yes, thank you, Manas. Thanks for bringing the COVID and the digital transformation together in one platform. Now, the key question which comes in is, that's all good. We know digital technologies are there. We know there is a value that we can have from digital. How do you go about it? How do you create a strategy around digital? I would say there are these 5 pillars. And these pillars get anchored by what is called as the enterprise vision or the digital North Star that you have for yourself. Do you want to go digital just because it sounds nice? Or is there a specific goal that you have put for it? Saying, is this about certain new channels, new products, new services, certain revenue ambition or cost ambition? So that ambition will drive the pillars below. Now, what are those pillars? The first is to have a digital transformation office, to see that I have the right skills and organization available to me to drive digital in the organization. Digital cannot be everybody's responsibility, and we expect it to bring the change that you expect it to bring. So that's the first. Second one is digital and enterprise technologies, they will closely intersect with each other and they will be interdependent on each other. So what we need to do is to have a linkage, because these two will run at a slightly different speeds. Enterprise technology will be performance oriented, large scale and stable systems. Digital solutions or pilots or projects might be sometimes innovative. You are taking a bit of a risk by experimenting with something, but these need to coexist in your technology landscape in the organization. Third is benefits tracking. I can't tell you about how many times we have those conversations with CXOs about the bottom line impact of digital and what was sold versus what was delivered, right? So very important to have a very structured benefit tracking mechanism, therefore showing eventually that you're adding value to the vision that you have set out for yourself. Fourth is that hiring the right digital skills or engaging the right digital skills is very important. For those skills of the future, beg, borrow, steal. You want to train your own team, you want to hire, you want to partner, you can use various models, but you will need those specific skills to come and drive digital in your organization. And last point is around partnerships and ecosystem. You will not be able to do digital transformation only within the 4 walls of the organization. Many of the use cases and opportunities will depend on you successfully partnering with your ecosystem players. Now, this could be suppliers, customers, and other affiliates, thereby creating propositions which by yourself you may or may not be able to put on the table. Now, these are these 5 pillars that we typically say which guide the digital ambition for an organization. And with that, I think, yeah, we'll probably move to the Q&A in interest of time. So let's now hear from the audience here. What are the themes which are coming out from whatever they have heard so far? So I will just go through some of the questions, and I will request other panelists also to take their thoughts on this. So one of the questions that's come in is, what is the international assessment of India in terms of emerging technologies and what is their adoption, right? So where do we stand vis-a-vis the world, right? Now, as Professor Sharma was also mentioning, we don't have the dearth of talent. It is our talent which goes and innovates when we, in the Silicon Valley, right? So from a talent perspective, I think we have the right ingredients. What we possibly need to have is the right ecosystem to support that talent. For the same innovators to come and create world-class products and services in India. So it's the ecosystem play. Otherwise, I would say in the talent perspective, we are pretty much there. The next question is there, and I'll probably request thoughts from Manas. It says that digital transformation is very wide area, but what is the human link there? I think the question which is coming in is that would digital going to replace humans eventually? What are we looking at? So I think that's the question that is coming through. Manas, over to you.
No, it is a very valid concern, and I think people always think, and especially Sushant, as you were talking about robotics, and typically when we think of robotics, we think of humanoid robots, right? But as many people are aware, there is a lot of robots that are there in the manufacturing industry which don't look like humans, but they do some of your jobs, right? So it takes away that manufacturing job. Right. So yes, that is an element. But what that brings is you need somebody to therefore build that robot. You need somebody to maintain that robot. You need somebody to program that robot. Right. So there are skills of the future, like we were highlighting in the one of the pillars of what makes a digital transformation successful. You are looking for efficiency. You are looking for cost competitiveness. You are looking for streamlined operations, right? Because you are now ensuring that there is less error, your quality levels are higher, there is less reverse supply chain and quality rejects that are happening on the products that you're making, which a robot would make. But what that means is that person is not doing that current job. So his job then evolves. So as we bring digital into the picture, the human angle also needs to evolve along with that, and that thinking has to happen with that digital transformation. So when we say digital transformation, it's honestly not just about the technology that is transforming, but it's also the people that have to transform along with that, right? So, and I think one of the lacking is whenever we look at a digital transformation, many clients just look at, let's buy this product, let's buy this solution, let's buy this technology. But if you don't look at it from a holistic standpoint, it won't succeed eventually.
That's absolutely.
Manas,
yeah,
Sushant, sorry, please add.
Now go ahead, Samriddhi.
Yeah, so I have a related question from one of the audience persons. They are saying that in case of manufacturing, where the percentage of semi-skilled and unskilled labor is very high, then how do you expect them to introduce technology to them? What kind of training modules should they design for them? Because I mean, they're since they're partially skilled, then how should they go about it? That's a question from a manufacturing, especially from a manufacturing point of view.
Right. So I think it's a very valid question. And in this case, what we typically do is when you're talking about semi-skill and partially skill, the evolution of training that we are saying is not easy. In which case you will be able to translate some of them. And this is where the digital capability maturity assessment that comes in, right? Some people, while they might be doing mostly manual work, would have that propensity, right? And I think Professor Sharma was saying this before we were starting the webinar, that a test or an IQ test is not necessarily always the right clue of the ability of a person to pick up certain things. So the kind of short answer to that question, Samriddhi, that you're asking is some portion of that will be able to evolve, some will not, and that some will not evolve will have to then migrate to other aspects and see what aspects will not get automated, right? So for example, it could be around people interfacing, right? It could be around regulatory or aspects which will need much more human ingenuity, right? Which could be certain areas where caregiving, etc., might be there, or the human touch around a certain sales process that you would require. So I think where you can get some of that partially skilled or moving to niche products, right, which you cannot automate. So something like a handicraft or a boutique requirement, which is you are giving value to it because it is customized, it is a once made for you kind of an effort. That kind of a skill has to be. So the answer to that is part of that labor force will have to evolve, part of that labor force will have to migrate and redeploy, right? And I think that overall ecosystem is something that maybe one organization cannot take. Right now, if I were to take an example of Coal India, or I see there are people from Central Coal Fields and others that are also here. You may not be able to move all of your operators there as you go into, say, wall-to-wall mining or automation thereof. But how are you able to then move them to the aspects of engaging with your stakeholders there? How are you able to get them into the procurement process, for example? And how are you able to get them into the maintenance of some of these equipment? So some of that will have to be addressed there, and some of that will then have to be addressed in the ecosystem thereof, right? In the community affairs there. So it has to be a mix, and that's where it has to be overall play of the organization as well as the state government, the community that has to come together and solve it. And again, maybe here it would be good to hear Professor Sharma's thoughts on this question.
Sir, can you hear us? Sir, your audio is absent, sir.
Manas are still going at it. That's so fantastic. So anyway, no, I didn't mean to actually drop by, but I'm here. If there's anything that I could contribute
Yes,
to,
sir.
to ask me. I don't know
Yes,
answer
sir.
to all the questions as well as Sushant and Manas do. So if there's some overarching question, you can pitch at me.
Certainly, sir. So we were just discussing, there was a question from a manufacturing perspective that we are talking about skilling people to transforming and adapting digitalization. The question is that how do we draw the plan for semi-skilled and unskilled workers, especially on the shop floor, in factories and shop floor? So, sir, KPMG has already presented their view. We would like to hear the government's point of view.
Yeah, no, it's a complex question. I understand that because there are different, educational levels, there are different backgrounds, there are different job requirements, and so not everybody needs the same set of skills, for sure. And the whole point is when you need something, it will happen. Okay, so you may debate it for a very long time. I say, how is going to happen? Is that really possible? What, right? Or make very detailed plans for it, or you roll up your sleeves and jump right into it and keep refining it. And so this is going to happen. There are a couple of examples that I know, which is this coach factory, railway coach factory. So we are working with railways with this cyber physical mission and technology, and they have I remember chairman railway board was saying that they've already doubled their production of coaches, and basically linking up these machines, right, which were each working in isolation, and so they're working in tandem now, and so that itself increases productivity quite a bit. Now, of course, there are people working there, and I'm sure that they gain skills as they go. Basically, we first have to produce a lot of trainers, right? So you cannot do that, individually and so on. But large number of an army of trainers at different levels. Many of them would assist businesses of certain kinds. Others will assist in different ways. By the way, this mission cyber physical systems that we have put together, something very unique about that mission is that until now missions are basically isolated in the sense that this part will only do R&D, this part will only do technology, that part will do incubation, and the fourth one, the research part, where they would connect with the industry. All of that doesn't work because they themselves don't talk to each other. Therefore, it has to be an integrated, holistic mission. I love this word holistic. That was the last word I heard from Manas when I joined. So, let me try it out. Okay, holistic sounds very good. So what it means is basically there we have basically the same set of people who create the interface. So there is a clear direction about this is what we want to develop. Then there's a big picture. Then you break it into little parts like a jigsaw puzzle. And then you're doing that, but there have to be somebody behind it which is reassembling these parts. Now these parts are basic R&D, design, prototyping, incubation, industry connect, and human resources. So that's very important, and that's what the point is about. Human resource ought not to be completely divorced from everything else. It's not like, okay, it's a standalone shop that would do this kind of stuff. We know that our educational shops are not very effective. And the reason, again, because education is not connected with nothing else. It's also a free radical, a dangling wire. There is no connectivity. It's neither getting from anywhere nor going anywhere. It's just here. So I think, anyway, I don't want to overwhelm you with my philosophical talk. What I want to say is, look, this is a very good question. And basically, opportunities and the need generate the mechanisms by which it will happen. There is absolutely no doubt that this will happen. This would have to happen. And a lot of people, a lot of organizations, a lot of structures will come into it if there is, as opportunities multiply and they expand. Now, you don't need to figure how, who, why, when, exactly sitting here. But it's important to understand that this would certainly happen. You can be a part of it, and this is a happening business. So it's good to actually get into it now than later. I
Thank
must
you,
warn
sir.
you, I will
Thanks for
never
your.
answer the question that you asked.
Thank
Okay,
you,
for
sir.
that, that's
Thank
why
you
I
so
have
much.
my good friends Manas and Sushant to tell you all the roadmap and all the magnification of 100x.
Absolutely, sir. Now we have a caller live, sir. He would like to ask you a
There is one
question.
more thing I think
Yeah.
I
Yes,
forgot
sir.
to tell earlier. You see, I was saying something about Atmanirbhar Bharat. Now, Atmanirbhar Bharat, one of the things which is greatly missing is Atmavishwas and Atmasamman. Okay, now I have heard this. Many people are saying this. I read it in everywhere in the newspapers. I was the original concept giver of this nearly a month and a half ago. So he said, look, what is it that we need for Atmanirbhar Bharat? It is not simply manufacturing. That will happen. The way I see it, we have so. What's the big deal? Right? Why can't we accept the fact that some of us will fail in some of the things? But this is what my favorite author Hemingway I read in high school said: is better to have loved and lost than not to have loved at all. So you see, neither success nor failure is permanent. Okay, so okay, don't feel too happy if you are a little bit successful, because next day life will knock it out of you, right? And so we prepare for both of them, and I think even PSUs have to do something about it. I'll tell you, I have trained some very bright students, BTechs. After 10 years, he was a big general manager in a company I don't want to name, and it's a top company in the country, really now the real top. And he comes back after 15 years, I don't know. He said that I have to, my team has to design this huge something. If I tell you what he had to design, that will give away the company. But anyway, so I said, but you know all this. I mean, why are you coming to me, right? He said, yeah. Well, after a lot of probing, he said, my top boss, he will have more faith if you sign it, this design for me, right? I was so shocked. I said, it's not, I don't have any special, expertise in what you're asking me to design, but, and it's not my job. Anyway, this was some time ago, 15 years ago. So just to discourage him, I said, yeah, but I charge 20,000 rupees per hour. Then he said, yeah, that's okay. Okay, I'll pay what, right? Then I said, hey, how to get rid of this guy, right? Not because I wanted to get rid of him, but I wanted these people to realize that they have this asset sitting with them and they don't trust him, right? It's the same guy if he was operating in US, right? We all know that he would be the top boss, okay? And people would trust him. In fact, if they wanted to have a design, they will not go to an American, they will come to an Indian. They will trust him more, right? So this is a question of trust. So now it comes to this. Look, I've thought a lot about it. If I don't trust myself, I cannot trust anybody else. If I have no Atma Samman, I will give no that Samman to anybody, right? If I have no Atma Vishwas, I have Vishwas in nobody, which is why as a society we are so negative. I mean, we have problems, but who's going to solve these problems? It's you, we sitting here, who's going to solve this problem. And we're not even sure that we have a handle on it. How are we going to do it? So I'm so sorry that this was not the question. And anyway, I was not asked to speak, but there's something, we have to be so passionate about it. I cannot tell you more. This is our fundamental failure. no trust, no Atmavishwas, no Vishwas on anybody else. Everybody here sitting in this office, I tell you, everybody, no matter at what level they are, they come to me, sir, is this acceptable, sir? Please approve. Sir, advise. Now I tell them, you are called advisor, right? It's a good thing they don't tell me that I'm called secretary, because I'm not secretary to them. But in any case, the point is, uh, everybody wants somebody else's signature. You see, every file must carry 6 signatures. Why? Because everybody is so insecure that you say, oh, it's your decision, right? But the buck has to stop at different levels of skills, at different levels of responsibility. Finally, everybody is looking to PM. He say, well, he will solve all problems, right? The problem is solved at the origin. It is not solved at any other level. So if each one of us is doing our work, that is our mandate, and this, and if we are incompetent actually to do that, right, then we must get these skills. You see, it is not taught anywhere. It is not discussed anywhere. And you see, it is so vital actually that this should be openly discussed at every level from primary school onwards. Some technology connection is there in this, all of it.
Absolutely, sir. Digital technology everywhere. So thank God we had COVID to realize it maybe. But yes, sir, absolutely. Now we have a live caller, Mr. Samantha, who would like to ask the panelist a question. Can we have Mr. Samantha online, please?
Yeah, hello.
Mr. Samantha? Yes, Mr.
Yeah, hello.
Samantha, please go ahead and ask a question.
Yeah, Mr. Devadutta Samantha from Rights Limited, Gurgaon. Actually, it was a very interesting panelist and their views on the digital transformation. Specifically, I am very much interested to hear about from Professor Sharma. The question is, what about the cyber security issue in the current environment and how it is getting addressed? Thank you. Maybe Professor Sharma can start. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Samantha. So the question on cybersecurity, with technology putting everything on the screen, how do we deal with data security? Sir, your thoughts on it? Professor, sir?
Yeah. Are you asking me?
Yes, sir.
Right. Now I realize it's time for me to exit. But okay, we would data security certainly is very, very big thing and is distributed among many departments. MIT is the largest single stakeholder to this problem about data security, and there's a policy, a good policy in offering regarding this. It's data security also has other dimensions, which is data localization, data flow, data handling, data ownership, whose data, who's making money out of it, and so on. But it's just a simple question about data security. That's a totally technical question. And like I said, you also require this, different interventions for differently sensitive data. To give you an example, we have opened a center in IIT Kanpur on data security, but data security, which is also intimately tied with the security of critical infrastructure. So what that means is now whether it is your power grid, whether it is railways, whether it is what, or your little color changing IoT bulb, I just got it, Google something a few days ago, very fascinating, right? All of that, of course, requires security, but their security requirements are at different level. So if you are looking at critical infrastructure and then another kind of infrastructure, then personal data and commercial data and so on, right? The efforts are on for all of them, which even includes now the quantum cryptography. We're talking about, I saw just when I was leaving, there was some talk about quantum computer, right? I really have to say something a little pessimistic here, which I truly hate to say. I only say once a day, anything which is a little pessimistic. which is that quantum computing is still either not possible or quite some way off, in the sense in which we talk about general computing. And there are very easy to understand reasons for it. You require what is called quantum coherence, and every little disturbance and going little noise and little anything, even the observation, macroscopic observation collapses the quantum states. So it is very difficult to maintain what is called qubits if they become large number. But it was quite correctly pointed out that for certain kind of problems, there is a class of mathematical problems for which you could do better with quantum computing. But quantum communication is more likely to succeed in near term. What that means is all our telephone networks, which are now insecure, okay, nationwide could be secured with quantum communication protocols. It's also the free space communication, like from satellite communication link and so on. There's work going on that, work going on this telephony. We have set up targets for this mission. One of those is a 50 qubit quantum computer, which is likely to happen in 5 years in India. 100 qubit is unlikely to happen. And then, but quantum communication, I'm very hopeful. Quantum computing will also proceed in a hybrid way to begin with, which means that you have classical computers like supercomputers working with what is called quantum algorithms, so which simulate the processes of quantum computing, but they are not hardware quantum computers. So there is going to be hybrid computing and all of that. But even more challenging or interesting areas are quantum sensors, quantum meteorology, like keeping track of time, for example. You have to keep track of time in femtosecond level today, which is another very digital technology area. So anyway, there is one minister's office is calling me, so I got to go, and it's been a great fun actually talking to all of you. Thank you so very much. Thank you indeed.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you.
Thanks a lot. KPMG, your thoughts on it? Data security versus digital transformation.
So, well, I would say it is absolutely essential, and I would say foundational for any digital transformation to have adequate cyber and data security. But I think we have passed the point of no return already, right? We already have a fair degree of technology in our daily lives, in our business operations. And therefore, for us to sort of say that we could actually go without that is probably not going to be realistic. So the way forward, of course, is even more increase in digitalization, automation, technology coming into our professional as well as personal lives. And that's possibly a one-way street. Definitely, what needs to be done is to have fairly strong handle on cybersecurity. And to do that, three dimensions I want to bring out. One is the entire regulatory landscape around cybersecurity, right? Now that is something which is being shaped on a real-time basis. In many cases, we see that the developments in this area are faster than the regulatory changes, but regulatory landscapes are also sort of catching up, right? So that's the first thing. And you see a lot of things around Data Protection Act, Data Privacy Act, and so on, all coming in response to the demands coming in. That's first. Second theme is around the technical maturity, right? So the way systems are becoming technically more mature, these cyber defenses are also becoming technically more and more mature. So for example, we are using AI and ML in business problems. We are today also using AI and ML to manage cybersecurity, because they might face cyber challenge which has never been seen before. So to respond at that point of time, you need systems which can detect such unusual activity and take action, right? And third angle, and I think that's the weakest link in the chain, is the human element, right? Which is the carbon where we talk about. So most of the data breaches, they happen because of, I would say, a human angle or maybe a issue there. So for example, social engineering, hacking, many of these have elements which have some element to do with where somebody did not take the right step as compared to what was supposed to be taken. And we see all these newspapers full of saying this person lost 50 lakhs in a cyber attack from his bank account because he shared his password. I think the challenge is not that whether the bank generated the OTP. The challenge is that the person actually gave the OTP, right? So to that extent, awareness of the organization and public at large on cyber and making cyber awareness pretty much part of our educational program is also something very important. I just take 20 seconds more. Incidentally, KPMG holds the Guinness World Book record on training the maximum number of school children on cyber awareness and the same day, right? So because we realize that is the need of the hour, we need to start young. We need to start teaching our kids about cyber safety and maturity from the grade 3, grade 4, grade 5 itself, because they're getting exposed to technologies from those ages. And that's the third theme that I wanted to highlight and close my comments on this.
Thanks, Sushant. Indeed, we need to start young on this. We have one last question, though we have many more that we would really like to take up, but due to paucity of time, we really have to close the webinar. So we take one last caller, Mr. Vijay Kumar. Can we patch him live, please, Mr. Vijay?
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Go ahead, Mr. Vijay. Please ask your question. Yes, we can hear you. Please ask your question.
Yeah, now we are seeing a demand slump, especially because people are totally avoiding the shopping complexes, malls, etc., and only buying the need-based on need basis. Especially online, also we are going and buying only when we require a specific item. A lot of impulse buying by families, and especially the purchase for children, impulse buying has gone out. So how do we recreate the shopping feeling experience to the people? Because till now, whatever we have discussed is at the industry end, B2B end. How to go to B2C so that the people are sitting at home and using virtual reality, they can see the shop and they can see the thing. At least if they cannot feel it, either they can see it and the shopkeeper can explain to them, and then they can purchase it as a seamless thing.
Thank you, Mr. Vijay. Yeah, indeed, a very relevant question. How to woo the customers? Very relevant, yeah. So, KPMG, your thoughts, please.
I can give a quick overview of that. And honestly, I think the answer is it's a bit of a spectrum. So one is, of course, the physical medium that you've been typically used to, right? Sometimes we honestly, as the caller rightly said, we used to go to the malls and we didn't have any purchase objective in mind, but you went there and you bought, right? I mean, you would probably not even call it impulse purchase, right? But I call it visual purchase, right? So, you view and then you buy. Now, part of that on that spectrum is the physical. The other is the complete e-commerce change of it, which a lot of us are doing right now, right? In fact, in some of the trends and surveys we've done by our consumer goods practice, has seen that there's been actually a significant uptick year on year or month on month from the previous month on e-commerce purchases now, because people have gone online shopping on a vengeance. Because they've not been able to do that. But honestly, I think it's a spectrum, right? I mean, so you will probably not have the physical, but not everything will move online as well, right? What you will have is what we call omni-channel or hybrid selling, right? Where you will maybe look at the thing on your laptop, on your phone, and then still want to go out and visit it. And the go out and visit it may not necessarily happen in a mall, but the store might come to you, where you've already seen services being provided on a truck basis, whether that's salons. And this is happening not only in Europe, but also there are some startups that are doing it in India. You are also seeing that in cases of fabrics and garments where that's happening, where the store comes to you. It is honestly to the caller, it's also happening in B2B perspective. For many of our oil and gas clients, we are looking at mobile tanking, where the oil tanker actually comes to you, and more than that, it's on demand. So it's like you can pretty much also do it on your LPG cylinder, where you can actually book your LPG cylinder and get it on your app. Whether it's Bharat Petroleum, Indian Oil, or HP Gas, But you can now actually do it for other fuels as well, right? So it is being piloted. You already have mobile tankers for events such as melas, fairs, events, so on and so forth, whether it's diesel, etc. Increasingly, we will see how can we bring it to societies, offices, complexes, etc. So it's more about getting to that B2B2C kind of a thing, and that's where that spectrum comes in, right? So you would have what you used to have, what you're already seeing online, but then there is a bit of a spread of omni-channel and new models of interfacing which will kind of create that demand. So I'll just pause there. Maybe Mr. Sopti, Sushant, if you have thoughts.
No, Manas, you explained it very well. In fact, definitely consumer habits, consumer knowledge about the products, etc. If we talk about industries, in fact, earlier people used to do the marketing by calling the people there. Now everything has to go to digital. In fact, many companies have already adopted it. I mean, three-dimensional presentations are being made to the customers. Users are being explained to them, and we are seeing the demand is picking up in the industries. People need not be called there. Their habits are changing. I think similar thing will happen in the consumer area also. We are talking of the malls. So there could be virtual tours which will take place to the malls. And one can see it. Of course, I remember about a few years back when there was an online shopping thing was there. At that point of time, I used to tell my children also, if I don't touch it, I mean any object, I cannot place the order. Now I am changed completely. Now I am feeling it's better to order online, whether COVID or no COVID. I think similarly, virtual tours will take place to the place, and of course, basically going to malls is not only shopping. Basically, it's a I mean, cultural, shift which is taking place. People go there for enjoyment also, for socialization also. I hope that COVID will not remain forever. I mean, it's a matter of another 2-3 months, and things will, come to the normal. It will not be the new normal. Things will change. Of course, habits will undergo change. Consumer behavior will undergo change. I think that's all I wanted to add. Smriti?
Yes, sir, very well put. So with the COVID, a lot of news will develop. But since, as DG sir said, that hopefully it will not remain forever. So maybe we'll do certain things from a recreational perspective more than a habit. So closing down on that positive point, that we go back to our routines as fast as possible. I would like to thank the esteemed panelists for their informative presentations, and to Professor Sir especially for his active participation in the discussion. But before that, may I now request Mr. S. Saktimani, Director Finance, Siemens Corporation India Limited, for a vote of thanks. Mr. Saktimani has led many projects in his company successfully, and he's also Executive Board Member Scope. So over to you, sir. Saktimani, sir, over to you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. It's a nice experience to learn about the innovation, and the presenters, they have done a wonderful job. See, the KPMG has done an excellent job of giving a pictorial views, and Mr. Professor Sharma has given lot many thoughts how it can be done. He said there is a requirement to be raised. In case if you think of a requirement, if you define the requirement, things will get automatically settled. That's what he has said. See, that's a wonderful experience. It is a practical things what he has told. See, आपको उधर जाना है, so you will reach. The technology will take you there. You have to make the requirement. The requirement, that's what he was telling. Okay, that's a wonderful thing. Okay, Scope has done a wonderful initiative, let me tell you. The webinar is a thought process of Mr. Shukti Saab. This is a wonderful experience, and because of the COVID, we are standing today. It's a wonderful opportunity. Otherwise, if the COVID would not have been there, today Mr. Professor Sharma would not have been here, and the KPMG would not be giving, and I'm giving from another places. So many people are getting connected. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for us to do the business bit differently. See, the new man, a person who has asked, a gentleman has asked, see what will happen to the impulse? Impulse will continue to be there. See, there are today, so many people in India will be purchasing digital mobile phones. Why? There is an impulse created. Yesterday and today, the prime days. Everybody understands that. The impulse are created in a different levels. Previously, there is another model of malls. Today, there is another model of another things. Tomorrow, it may be a new thing. The innovation will never die. Let me tell you, the business maintaining the status quo is death. You have to create innovations in order to keep the things floating. It's like a breathing. The innovation is a breath. You have to be there. Otherwise, you will definitely die down. Innovation is critical to every company. It may be a BHEL, it may be CCI, it may be a wonderful company, a new innovative company. It is required for everybody. Even an innovation company has to innovate the method of selling. The KPMG has to innovate how to do the webinar, how to do the training. Every day they have to change the methodology. The innovation is very much important. You have to change the practice. That's what he was also telling. You have to fail many times. Failure is not a failure. It is learning how not to do the work so that you can learn it better. It's a wonderful thing, sir. See, the organization has, we have seen the PSUs are really doing its wonderful business today. Maybe pre-COVID, the people were not relying maximum on PSUs, but PSUs have its inherent strength. The inherent strength comes out when there is this type of scenarios. When the critical scenario comes into picture, the inherent strength comes. You have seen how our soldiers have done in the Chinese border, India-China's border. See, when there is a requirement, our people come out. They show the strength. Otherwise, you see, when you see the statistics, they may not be that much good. But when there is a requirement, people come out. Indians has the ability to do that. See, basically, India is a country which has lived for last 5,000 years because every different conditions we have tuned ourselves. Every different type of rulers we tuned ourselves. We innovated how to live today, how to live that time, how to live tomorrow also. So absolutely, I have a full faith on a PSUs as well as the India that it will, innovate to pass this scenario also. Okay, Scope has done all the efforts to work smoothly during the pandemic. I have also seen that. Not many things are happening. They are conducting the board meetings also. I compliment DG Scope for this wonderful work. Digital is a future for tomorrow. Okay, definitely, yes, digital is one of the things, one of the handle to take us to the next level. But it is not the only handle. It's not the only handle. See, there are enough. If the people decides, yes, I have to leave tomorrow, definitely they will find out a methodology. With the methodology, a lot of innovations will come. I like to thank Professor Ashutosh Sharma for his wonderful speech. See, he is so humble. He could able to explain things very simply. The level of secretary level has done a n number of projects, could able to come to our webinar and explain the things in a practical way. The person who works on a lot many projects, Atmanirbhar and other things, he is the backbone of Indian science technology. I thank you for giving a time for the PSC fraternity. On the base of PSC fraternity, sir, please convey our thanks to him for giving us time so that we are regenerated to take up the innovations. I thank Chairman IOCL, Shri Vaidyasav, as well as I thank the KPMG team. Really wonderful. The first slide was made the things. See, your first slide, as well as there is a slide wherein you said about the 5 important pillars for the innovations. That's really worth mentioning. And the first slide, you have taken a long time, but it is worth taking a long time on the first slide. Okay, that first slide has made the day. I thank Mr. Manas, I thank Mr. Shushan for the wonderful inputs, and your presentation has made the day today very nicely. Of course, I thank each and every participant and participating institutions for making this a wonderful day. I hope they will be implementing some of the innovative things. They will be creating the requirement in their own organizations. They will tell everybody the training somebody was asking. The training will happen. Once you know where you have to reach. Once you know Ram has to go to Lanka, the bridge will be formed. Because there is a requirement. Sita is there. If not bridge, then again there would have been another, a flying object would have been made. so that everybody would have gone. See, definitely speaking, the innovations will come with a requirement. Please define your requirement, understand the requirement, think that you can reach that point. If you can't think of that, the Atma Vishwas, Atma, you have to self-believe that you can reach that place. Once you reach that, you decide that you can reach the place. You'll find out the method. You tell the team. When the American president said, yes, America will land on the moon, that time what he will be doing? But it was landed. When we have decided, yes, we will do it. Our person says, yes, India will make. देखिए बहुत आदमी जो है चाइना से लेना बंद कर दिया. Let me tell you, my own son said he will not use Chinese phones. See, let me tell you, the requirement, when the leader says there is a requirement, definitely everybody follows. Let me tell you, there is a requirement today. There is a requirement to develop it. India is actually an innovative country. हम लोग जुगाड़ वाले हैं, अच्छा काम करते हैं, ठीक है? Let our requirement be bigger. Let our vision be bigger. Let our quantum things will be bigger, so that it becomes a innovative for others to show. जुगाड़ छोटा है, but जुगाड़ जो है थोड़ा ज्यादा विजन हो जाती है, तो बड़ा हो जाती है, इनोवेटिव हो जाती है, पैटेंट हो जाती है. थोड़ा सा ज्यादा सोचिए, ज्यादा थिंक करिए, रिक्वायरमेंट ज्यादा बढ़ाइए, एक्सप्लेन करिए. Let me tell you, all the institutions, please explain to your employees, there is a requirement today. Definitely things will happen. Thank you very much. Thank you once again for the scope for conducting wonderful program. Thank you very much. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.
Thank you, Shaktiman.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Indeed, need to create a requirement so that we can innovate. Indeed, it was an honor to share the same platform with Professor Sharma ji. Sir, we thank you for your guidance, and we also thank you for sparing time with us and taking the questions so patiently and so and contributing to the discussions and deliberations so actively. We also thank Chairman IOCL for his time to the webinar and contributing to the discussions. We also express our gratitude to KPMG team for a wonderful presentation and taking the questions so patiently and actively. Thank you, Shaktimani sir, for your inputs and giving us a new jargon of creating a requirement. And thank you, DG sir, for your mentoring. A big thank you to Scope Corporate Affairs and technical teams for putting the webinar together. Last but not the least, gratitude to all the participants for their enthusiastic participation. And we wish to meet you again soon. Till then, please stay safe, and a big thank you to all of you. Thank you so much. And with this, we end the webinar.